Welcome everybody to our monthly webinar. And Ken, thanks again for participating and sharing some of your experience here with us.
It's great to be here, Guilherme. I always enjoy our chats and get to discuss some of my favorite topics.
Well, this one is core to our conversations about risk management and ERMs and so on. So many companies adopt ISO 31000 and still struggle to connect with the business itself, with the operation, right? We see this very frequently. The ISO not being able to go beyond the compliance aspect of it and the red tape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we jump into that question to you, I'd like to ask our audience a question just to get them involved. And again, just reinforcing what Jerusalem said, please participate, put on the chat your comments, your questions, and we're going to try to address them as we move on with the webinar. So a pop-up will appear on your screen with the question of how would you describe your organization's current approach to risk management? You'll have multiple answers where you can select which one fits best how you perceive your organization. As you answer, we'll be able to see the answers online here. And as a partial response, so people are still answering, we can see that most organizations have a structured framework in place, but limited operational integration. So they'd have that exact challenge that I talked about of connecting risk management with the day-to-day in the company. Ken, is this your perception of the sample of companies and organizations that you've been in contact with throughout your professional life? Most are here in this, have a framework, but did not completely connect with the operations?
Yes, I think that's definitely the case. And I think this actually speaks to a webinar that you and I had a little while back about whether ERM is doing its job or not. And one of the things that we talked about is just it's better than not having an, or the evidence shows it's better than not having a program at all. But it's not as effective as actually fully putting it through. I think too many people still look at it as a checkbox exercise. So data has shown, like I said, that it's better than nothing having an ERM program, but it hasn't moved the needle in terms of overall risk maturity. It takes a little extra time and a few extra resources to improve your risk maturity, and improving it, though, is how you maximize what you get out of it. So then the question becomes kind of, is the juice worth the squeeze? And the evidence says it is. So so when we talk about where ERM programs fall down, it tends to be in applying it to everyday work. So it seems to be the big issue. If ERM is not helping drive decision making, it's really not doing its job. So it's nice to complete a risk register and go through your list and so forth. But if you just put it on the shelf and forget about it, it's not really helping you out.
Yeah. And Ken, why does that? What are the challenges and the obstacles that lead organizations not to connect, right? Because ISO 31000 is a very strong framework, but why do they face this challenge, right, of connecting with daily operations?
I think the framework itself is sound. I don't really have any issues with it. I think if I was to update it, and I know it's due for an update in 2027, I would put more effort into, or more emphasis on, embedding it into your day-to-day operations and embedding it into decision making. I know it's already been done. It's already discussed in the framework, but I think that's where extra emphasis needs to be, just to say this is a bottleneck. If you only do it up to here, you're not going to get as much benefit out of it. So you need to be able to go that extra step and make sure that those decisions are not just, you're not just gathering that information. That information is being passed on to decision makers who use it to make better decisions.
All right. So if you don't fully connect with the operations, as you said, you don't get as much benefit from it. How come, I mean, is that perceived by top management? Do they understand that a fully implemented risk management model with all the way down through the corporate ladder to operations would generate more value or benefit, as you put it? Or do you think that top management doesn't see it that way? They just see it as a compliance exercise. The problem starts with top management. I guess the question is
Yes.
that, right?
I think that's absolutely true. One of the first things we always teach in any risk management course is you have to have buy-in from senior leadership. If they don't understand what you're trying to do and don't see the benefit of the program, then it's not going to proceed. And it's the same with the board too. If they don't support it, it's not going to be supported by the C-suite, and then you won't get the benefit from it. Where I work right now, actually, I'm quite fortunate because our CEO is a big fan of enterprise risk management. So we make sure that we have a channel to the C-suite. Our format is to have 2 workshops a year. We know it's a big time consumer, but we also know it's important. So we have 2 workshops a year with our senior management team, just going over the risks that all of them are responsible for. They are the risk owners, and just ask them for updates. And if something's changed, then our CEO will say, "Hey, if we do we need to add extra resources to deal with this risk?" And then we know that they're making decisions based on risks of where things are, issues are popping up that we need to deal with. So in that way, we can say that it's working. But not all leaders get that, so they don't. If that's not their attitude, then it's going to be hard to get the bandwidth. It's going to be hard to get the resources and leadership's time to think about these things. I think that's where the big challenge lies.
First step would be getting the buy-in from leadership. And how do you cascade that down into the organization? How do you, like, once you get, let's assume that leadership is on board, they've had training, they are sensibilized to the importance of risk management. But okay, they are not in operations. They're not turning the knobs and making the the company run. So how do you cascade that to the to every level in the organization?
When you, I think when you look to the front lines, it's about getting risk information to all levels, and also getting risk information from all levels, so that this information is the key for decision making, and the conversations that it drives really help the organization grow and increase its risk maturity. And that's how you develop a culture of risk awareness that permeates the whole organization. And that's really what you need to kind of move the needle on risk management. If everybody's talking about risk and everybody has it in mind as a culture of risk awareness, then I think that's where you really add the value, and you get a lot more risk maturity out of it. Talk about a risk mature organization. It's one that goes through the steps it needs to get the full benefit from the exercise, from the program. And it's I've often seen it on a 1 to 5 scale. Most organizations, it's rare to see a 5. 4 is pretty good. A lot of organizations are at 3. So it's really how far you want to take it. And again, it comes to a resourcing issue. But when you're looking down, towards the front lines, you're trying to send them information on strategic risk from the top down, but you're also trying to get information from them from the bottom up, from what risks they're facing in their jobs. And that helps inform decisions for leadership as well. That's how they gather their data, how they gain their intelligence.
Okay. Makes sense. Let me call on our audience again to run a second survey. On your opinion, what is the biggest challenge in embedding risk into daily operations? What what's your reality in your company, in your organization, right? So you have a new pop-up there for a poll, and answers are starting to come in. Okay. If you have another answer that is not here, but you'd like to add, you can just put it on the chat and we'll see it, okay? So almost 50% is the lack of ownership across business units. That is, people don't feel that it's their responsibility, right?
Right.
That's something very common across our client base. The risk management office kind of takes care of risk management, and it sounds like it's not the operation people's responsibility. It's the risk management office's responsibility, right? So this doesn't have ownership across the organization. And the second most voted here also is limited visibility into risks in real time. So I guess this makes them think about the topic once a year, right? When they are named as responsible for some risk, but then the year goes on and they don't get any feedback on that. What's your perception on this, Ken? Are these the two most relevant challenges that you see across organizations?
Right, they're definitely very common. Absolutely, Guilherme. The lack of ownership across business units speaks to me in a way, because that comes from leadership from the top. It's set by the tone at the top from the board and from the C-suite. If it's important to them, it needs to be important to everybody else too. So the leadership has to cascade that message down. That's usually done in policies. If you have a sound risk management policy that says what everybody's responsible for, then that helps them to say, okay, this is what I have to do. I had a little bit of a smile about that, because I have a client right now who's going through the exact same thing. They've got departments who think that the risk management team is responsible for coming up with the risk register, and it's really not. As I always tell people, I provide the process, you provide the content. I cannot know what you do as well as you do, so you're the expert there. You tell me what you do and what your risks are. I'll help give you a process to communicate that in a consistent, repeatable way that won't get you fired, and will make sure that you get your concerns, transmitted where they need to go. As far as looking into risks in real time, again, that goes back to, I think, doing your quarterly risk register and then forgetting about it. One of the best solutions I've seen to dealing with that is a fellow I used to work with at the city of Edmonton when I worked there for many years, and he said my risk register becomes my work plan. I have to deal with risks on a regular basis. He worked at transit, so you're always dealing with buses and trains, and the hazards that they may have. So he took it very seriously to say that my risk register is my work plan. And he's actually now the city manager there in Edmonton. So it seems to have worked well for him. So
yeah. So I guess I'm old enough to have experienced a transition that is different from what we're talking about, risk management, but in quality control, right? In the beginning of my career, I worked a lot with operational excellence and quality control and total quality and all of that. And back then, it was common to have a quality control office, like a
Mhm.
management practice office that would assist, the departments with this knowledge, with this
Right.
skill. But throughout time, we still see some of that, but it became a skill that is expected from managers.
Right.
So you don't have that office anymore, or you still have in some places, but
Right.
it's just a skill that managers should know, right?
Right.
How
Mhm.
to manage total quality and quality control and so on. In risk, I still don't see that. I still see like, oh, there's a risk office that is responsible for risk, and not, as you said, just responsible to spread out the knowledge or the process of how to do risk management.
Right.
People still don't assume that risk management is a skill for every manager, right?
Right.
That's my perception. Do you think this will, as in quality control, it kind of shifted from office to just a basic skill for you to be a manager? Will it happen with risk management as well, in your opinion?
I think it will. It takes, it takes a lot of time to move the needle on this kind of thing. It's just I always tell people that it's risk management is you need to think of it like budgeting. It helps you plan for the following year and what you're going to be doing, and it's as important as budgeting. And I say this as a CPA, so I'm a big budgeting fan also. I mean, budgeting is something you don't have a choice about. You have to do it. And if I see risk management should be seen in the same light as that. I absolutely agree, Guilherme. It's going to be a skill that every manager has to have. Um, I always say ERM also stands for everyone's a risk manager. So, and that goes from, like I said, the chairman of the board down to your frontline staff. Everybody needs to understand what risk means to them, what risk they face, how they're responsible for managing them properly and reporting them properly, uh, so that proper decisions can be made. It helps provide information to leadership. It helps in more efficient resource allocation. So, the benefits are many and they're well known, but they need to be internalized by managers and leadership, and then flowed down to their staff.
Okay, still on that line, I know there are many risk management courses for risk managers, right? So RIMS, you are an instructor within RIMS, and I think maybe most of your audience in risk training is professionals of the area, right? I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Um, but is it common to have training for non-professionals, for people in marketing, for people in operations and finance about risk management so that they can build this skill?
I think, well, I'll give a little perspective here, and I'll try not to take too much time. But I teach 3 courses for RIMS. One is Introduction to Risk Management. So that would be for anybody who's involved in it. You could be a manager of another department of like marketing or something like that. It would help you out, but it's mainly designed for people who are going to implement a risk management plan. The thing is, you don't need a lot of education to teach managers what they need to do. When I do my workshops with people, I find the best way to build a risk register and to build, get the program rolling for an area is through a facilitating workshop. And in that workshop, I spend the first 10 or 15 minutes just explaining what risk management is and how to do it and why we're doing it. And that's it. That's really all people need. They don't need that much more training. Um, I can give you an example of a company in California they won the RIMS Risk Manager of the Year award in 2019, and they give tailored training sessions for each level of leadership. So the board has their own training of what they need to do. The C-suite has its training of what they need to do. Managers do, and frontline staff, and they only need 15 minutes. So for their contribution, it's not a big deal. But it's just a matter of getting that initial one and being reminded of how important it is. And not only that, like and of course, the most important part is always what's in it for me. They have to see a benefit for it. Why am I spending my time on this? Why am I spending my resources on this? So they have to understand that, why they're doing it, why it makes sense.
Okay, we talked a little bit about then culture and training. Maybe culture as one of the um, causes of not connecting, the risk management framework with real decisions in the front line.
Right.
And
yes.
Training as maybe a solution to get it there, right? And as you said, it doesn't really require that much training. But other than this, why do so many organizations struggle to connect risk management with real business decisions? Are there other causes that you see relevant?
I think that it can be tricky to risk or to link risks with strategy and with operations, and understanding what your basic processes are. Your I guess they call them the value chain. So it's understanding your value chain, and this is for the risk manager's part. It's that's kind of their realm. To know know the business processes and make sure that the risk assessments, the risk management they do ties directly to those processes, and so that keeps it relevant. And as those processes change, so must your risk management program. The key, I think, is to keep it as simple as possible. You have a single, repeatable, consistent process to identify and assess your risks, and also to find ways to tie it to your business processes and your strategy. I don't worry as much about KPIs. That's more backward looking, but although we use risk management as a tool to make sure you achieve your KPIs, I look more at KRIs. They're more forward looking. Those are key risk indicators, just a sign when a risk might be starting to manifest itself. Something might be starting to go wrong. And you can use, and actually sometimes you can use the same measures for both. You can use a KPI as a key risk indicator as well. Watching it over time and seeing if your score is still where you want it to be, or trending in a different direction from where you want it to be, then you can follow that up and investigate and see what's going on. Look for the underlying causes.
Okay. So these KRIs will help us look ahead, right? But I'd like to ask you, what are the key indicators that risk management is truly adding value, not just ensuring compliance, right? So the KRIs that you mentioned are risk specific, is for a specific risk, right? Taking more a view of the forest, not of the tree, the specific risk, right, but the risk management model.
Yeah.
How do we measure if the model is actually adding value to that organization?
Okay. There's a few ways actually. One I look at a lot is it's called a risk maturity model, and it's every major CPA firm has their own proprietary one. So do a lot of insurance companies like Marsh, those big organizations. If you're doing consulting, if you're engaging them for a consultation, they can do that for you. I know RIMS has one. It's free to members. Otherwise, you have to pay a little bit of money for it. But it really is just a series of questions about your organization and what processes it has, and then it'll spit out a result for you to say where your risk maturity is. I said before, I talked about a 1 to 5 model, so it'll give you a score, 2.73 or whatever based on your answers to your questions. That's one way of looking at it. And I know when I worked at the city of Edmonton, I was asked sometimes, kind of justify my existence. And I would say, well, what if you could save 0.5% of your budget through not having to repeat things, not making as many mistakes, not having as many unpleasant surprises, and even finding the odd opportunity to help raise revenue or to do a process more efficiently. And so on a $3 billion budget, 0.5%, about $15 million, which was way more than I made. So that helped to justify my existence there. Yes.
Yeah. But when you say, well, let's start from the first part of your answer, right? Risk maturity models.
Yeah.
Risk maturity models, I understand they measure how well your system is implemented, right?
Mhm.
But are they able to capture in some way the value that this system adds, or it focuses more on means or on ends, right? The final result. Do you know any maturity model that is able to connect with that value added, or are they focused on, did you do this or that, or means, right?
Mm. No, that's a fair point, Guilherme. It talks about the process, and like in other words, it gives suggestions on where you need to go next in the
Mhm.
process to develop it further to realize the benefits. And there are real ones, because a lot of the questions they'll ask about, like, do we have regular discussions with leadership? Is leadership getting this information? Are they acting upon it? And that's really the nut of it right there. If the answer is yes to that, then you've got a certain level of maturity.
Mhm.
Then the question becomes one of consistency. Um, but I know there are some external measures as well to see, or external benefits, I guess you could say. I know there's an example of a university system in California where it was found out that they had an effective enterprise risk management system. Their primary source of funding was through bond issues on the open bond market. And once the market found out that they had a good ERM system in place, they thought, "Ooh, there's less risk here." And they actually had their risk premium on their bonds reduced by about 10 basis points. So that saved them a lot of money just by the market recognizing that they were managing their risks effectively.
That's very interesting because it translates into something very tangible, right?
Mm,
You can actually calculate an ROI on, all the investment in doing risk management and the savings
exactly.
you got on your bonds, right? Uh,
Exactly.
that's a challenge. When you implement a risk management system, it's very conceptual, right? It's very
Mhm.
abstract. So
Yes.
how do you sell it internally to, and if you have some kind of concrete result or concrete value saying, oh, you were exposed to so many $1 million of potential losses. Now with risk management, we reduce that to so many $1 million. I know this must be hard to do, but you brought an excellent example, right, from the university in California, right?
Right.
Uh, do you see organizations trying to give this risk management a more tangible value so that it's easier to sell within the company? What other efforts have you seen in this line, right?
You mean of selling risk management
Yeah,
to people?
making it tangible, making it like maybe translating into financials and something that the board can understand what is the exact value. Not exact, but
No,
what is
no,
the
it's
value,
yeah.
yeah. It's never
No,
going
I
to be
understand.
exact, right? Yeah.
Oh no, no, exactly. I know in Canada they have what's called the ICDD program for directors. It's a training program for corporate directors.
Hmm.
And one of the modules they deal with in their training is risk management. So they actually understand that they do have a fiduciary responsibility to understand the organization's risks and what leadership is doing about them. So that's actually their part of their job to understand that, and they're getting that now. That it's actually becoming a legal requirement for them. So they get it much more now than they have before. So that's coming around, and since they have to set the tone at the top for the organization, that helps them to to communicate that down. These are the expectations we have. you need to do this, and they'll communicate that to the C-suite, and then the C-suite then have to communicate that down to their people. So I think that's where it's coming from. And one more vector I always hammer on at work is that the world is changing so much faster now that you really can't ignore your risks, because they will. If you're in a for-profit organization, a risk can come up that can end you, and you won't even see it coming if you're not looking for it. It'll just hit you one day and you're gone. And that's I think organizations need to work on that as much as they can, and look out ahead. Picture yourself in a submarine, put the periscope up, have a look around, see what's going on out there, and that's where you can get benefit from this. From you looking at your internal risks, like look at the processes that you have internally that may be at risk, or looking outside, looking at external factors that you can't control, but you nonetheless need to be able to adapt to. So, for example, changes in tariffs or changes in geopolitical stuff. So, if you live in Greenland, your world has changed a lot this year. I live in Canada, our world has changed a fair bit this year as well. So just because of your neighbors. So it happens, and it's happening all over the world, and it happens not so much that a lot is happening, but it's also happening faster.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why the quarterly risk register is becoming less relevant. You need to be able to do this as fast as you can. So
yes, that's a great point. And I just realized also that we're talking about training of management and directors and so on.
Mhm.
And I did an MBA. It's quite some time ago, but I'm realizing just now that in no moment in the MBA I had risk management topic at all, except maybe investment portfolio risk, and that was it.
Yeah,
It should be part of the basic management training for future managers, right?
exactly. I totally agree. There's a number of good programs out there actually that deal with risk management. I think York University in Toronto is a good one. There's a bunch in the States. I believe Oklahoma State, North Carolina State's an excellent program. So there are programs out there, but you're right. They're in the minority right now. So
Okay. I'd like to call another survey just to measure here the temperature with our audience. How often are risks actively monitored and updated in your organization? So this is touching upon your last comment, that it can't be the quarterly assessment, right? So another survey should have popped up for you guys. Let's see how it comes in.
put my glasses down to read.
We're basically split between annually and quarterly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone has it monthly, but this is actually what we see in practice, right? People,
Yes.
organizations having annual or quarterly reviews, but still very distant from the continuous, in real time risk assessment and reviews, right? Ken, so how can companies move from periodic risk assessments to a continuous, real-time risk visibility across the organization?
I have to confess that I still use Excel a lot in risk management, especially when I'm setting up things for clients from scratch. But as organizations mature, though, they need to recognize that change, like I said, is happening faster all the time, and Excel may not cut it soon. So, at which point, I think it's beneficial to look at technology-based solutions, even AI-powered solutions that help multiple data sources communicate with each other and populate your risk profile and keep it up to date better than a quarterly risk assessment can. I think
Okay.
we're getting there. One thing that makes me hopeful with AI is that I always go back and say, in a perfect world, what would this look like? And to me, in a perfect world, and I've been saying this for 15, 20 years now, that it would be, you would have your risks in real time. You would know exactly what's going on in any given moment. And it would be great to have, but now for the first time, I think we can finally see it on the horizon, how it can come to pass.
Yeah. I guess not just AI, but technology as a whole, right? It
Exactly.
helps
Yes,
permeate the organization with
absolutely.
risk management.
Mhm.
So we touched upon a few points here that I think technology can support. One of them you mentioned, like AI, doing continuous monitoring of risks and reassessing risks and having triggers to, real people saying, hey, you should look at this risk again because you have
Yes,
something new happening here. Uh,
exactly.
we, we actually have a webinar just on that, right? So
Ah,
whoever wants to watch this webinar, if you join the community, it's going to be there in the community, all past webinars that we have. So you'll be able to access that. But also the connection with other elements of the corporation and help engage people with that. For example, if you have risks connected to projects or KPIs or strategic objectives,
mhm.
and these risks are cascaded throughout the organization, uh, with directors, managers, everybody having their own um responsibility and accountability on risks. So technology helps make that visible and
Mhm.
connect that to your day-to-day work, right? So you're working on Teams, and that's your day-to-day tool. And if that is connected to your risk management system, your
Mhm.
Teams, you'll get, notifications, you'll get visibility of what's going on. And it doesn't stay out of your mind because it's out of your sight, right?
Right.
So I think technology can help a lot with these points, with visibility, with connecting into a structured model, strategy, risks, and other elements, engaging people, and this continuous monitoring that we talked about. But I'd like to ask Jerusalem to come back to our talk and maybe show us in practice how this can happen, how technology can support taking risk management out of just a compliance exercise to being part of the day-to-day um, life of a company, right? Jerusalem, um, can you show us a little bit of this?
Okay. Thanks, Guilherme. So as Ken mentioned, most organizations currently don't lack a risk framework. The gap is when it comes to continuity. Right? So risk management is currently often periodic, manual, and disconnected from daily operations. Right. So what I will show you today is how Actio, our risk management platform, helps you to make this process continuous, real time, and also fully embedded in your organization's operations. Right. So I'll share my screen. Right. So, what you're currently looking at is an individual dashboard, which is a personalized workspace. Right. So the idea is that we have this platform not just for risk management office, but for every department or every business unit that is involved in risk management. Right. So anyone who owns risk or mitigation plans or who has to perform any control reviews would have access to the tool. Right. So, and that person would directly go and see what their current risks are, like what are the like pending reviews that they need to do at that time, if there are like mitigation actions that they own and need to perform. right? So the idea is that to engage everyone in the company and the risk management process. Okay, so and also here in the calendar that we see important dates highlighted, right? So there are days for mitigation actions, for controls, and risk assessments. So this is making it the process continuous instead of having like the annual and quarterly review process. Okay, and here I have access to dashboards, so I'm just going to open one of them. So we're moving from individualized view to more of an organizational view and see the risks. Right. So what I'm currently looking at is a risk matrix. So I'm visualizing it from a perspective of the severity and a probability, and I can immediately see the critical risks here. Right. So I 3 critical risks. I know that what those risks are here and which department is responsible, and also the person who owns this risk, right? And like in this dashboard, I'm also able to do different type of analysis. So see which department or the business units has the most risk as exposure. So here I see that the financial team, there's like one critical risks and it has like many other risks that they are managing. Right. So this gives me an idea of where I stand in terms of my risks and any comments that I wanted to add. Right. And also every time that there could be like an important risk that you want to highlight and monitor, so you can flash it out in this dashboard. So this gives me a summary of those risks, right? So in financial management, there are 2 critical risks that I wanted to actively monitor. And I'm seeing that, okay, what the risk level is, the status of my mitigation plan, and the risk controls. Right. So the idea is that you create different visuals to help you analyze your risks and take an immediate action. Okay. And I just want to highlight like one feature here that is directly related to our topic. So the risk indicators. So we said that it's one way of looking into the future. So you can link it with any other platforms or like database that you have and set your threshold, like your minimum and a maximum. And if there is discrepancy from your threshold, that you're going to get a trigger to help you assess your risks, right? So you're not going to wait until your reporting timeline, like your annual or like quarterly, like to do your risk analysis or risk reviews, right? So this is going to send them triggers. So, and also not just for risk indicators, but in general, like this tool, it's going to send like any emails and notifications to inform a person that they have to monitor a specific risk when it's due. Right. So this is making it, instead of having like a passive process, you're going to have an active risk management process. Right. So there are different features in the software, but today, like for this topic, I just wanted to highlight these 3 features. I just wanted to show you that. But if you guys are interested in knowing more about our platform, I'm gonna leave my contact in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to show you how our platform works. I'll hand it over to Yuki.
Thanks, Ruslan. I think we can also, if you want to leave your contacts here, feel free if people want to talk directly to you and put their own, situation and talk specifically about their case with you. Feel free to reach out to Ken, okay? And if you have any questions, please put them on the chat here so that we can address them, or even any comments about your own experience with risk management with this challenge of, even though you may have ISO 31000, the challenge of taking that into operations and connecting that with decision making in the company, and that not being just a compliance exercise, right? So if you have any comments or questions, we'd love to address them. Ken, for now, let me ask you myself. I have a question for you. What do you see of difference? I know that you've worked a long time with the Edmonton city, right? What do you see of major differences in this culture of risk management between government organizations and private enterprise?
A colleague of mine put it very well. He said that he noted that it's actually fairly easy for a for-profit organization because your goal is quite obvious. It's to maximize profit. That's your job. So it's easy to establish your value chain. It's anything you can do to try to maximize your profit. When you're in a government organization or a not-for-profit, that's much different. So you have to the objectives you have there are different. You have a mandate. You have mandates to fulfill, and that's where you need to understand, like, what does success look like? It's not in profit. It's going to be in, am I achieving the goals that have been set out for me by city council or the government or whomever? Then how do we achieve those mandates? What is going to get in the way of us achieving those mandates? And what? So you kind of have to think in multiple dimensions too. Which mandates am I willing to trade off to achieve other ones if need be? So those are the kind of decisions they have to have. So in a lot of ways, I would say that the not-for-profits and government agencies are actually kind of ahead of the game that way, because they have to be a bit more dynamic in managing their risks because of those different constituencies that they face.
And you think it's also like there's a cultural difference in engaging with risk management between government and NGOs and private institution, or that just varies from organization to organization?
It varies from organization to organization, but I will say in general, it's harder for government agencies because it's harder to assign accountability for government agencies than for profit ones. So that way, you're looking more at the position as opposed to the individual. So people change around a lot in government agencies. Whoever was in this chair before is now in another chair, and someone else has come in. So their responsibilities have changed. Do they understand that their responsibilities have changed? Do they understand that they're the owner of this risk now, and how are they managing it? So because of that kind of mobility, that seems to be more in government agencies than in not-for-profit, or than in for-profits. That makes it a bit more challenging, but it's not impossible. You just have to make a point of assigning responsibility at the appropriate level to the appropriate individual who has the knowledge to make the change, to affect change, and the authority to do so. As a friend of mine said, it's the person who has to cut the check to clean up the mess. So,
yeah. Well, Ken, I thank you very much for being here with us again and sharing some of your experience with us. I urge our audience to fill in the feedback form. It's very important for us to know how we can do this better for you. And if you want also like a certificate of participation in the feedback form, you have one of the questions is that. And if you fill that in, we'll send you a certificate through the email. And well, thank you all again for participating, and hope to see you in our next month's webinar. And Ken, thank you very much again for.
It's been great, Guilherme. Thanks so much for having me. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it.
Us too. Thank you, guys.